Good morning and welcome to today's NENS webinar, which is entitled Meet, Call, and Chat from Anywhere with Microsoft Teams. My name is Ted Hulsey and I'm your host for today's event. First up is Kevin Martins. Kevin Martins is a principal cloud solution architect at Microsoft. Kevin is a frequent contributor to the Microsoft TechNet blogs and is a seasoned conference presenter and trainer, having presented to hundreds of attendees at Microsoft Ignite, Microsoft Inspire, and other Microsoft events. Kevin works alongside Microsoft partners and customers to help them achieve success and business results with cutting-edge Microsoft technologies, including Microsoft Teams and the Microsoft 365 suite. Next up will be Michael Kourkoulakos. Michael is a principal at New England Network Solutions. He has been an IT professional for over 20 years. As an engineer, Michael focused on enterprise networking and security, and today he spends much of his time guiding businesses on IT strategy and security. So now let me turn things over to Kevin to show you some of the amazing things you can do with Microsoft Teams in your business.
What we're going to talk about today, we've got some neat stuff. Teams is an amazing product, and it's only about 4 years old. And it's amazing what's been built in already into this immense product. I'll get into that in a little bit. But we're going to focus on the Microsoft Teams calling aspect, which is just one of the many features of Microsoft Teams. I'll go through some background areas as part one. I'll go through where we are today. And then I'll show you, I've got a really interesting video that'll show you some of the futures, some of the things that we're working on right now, more specifically with Teams meetings and how we're going to bring everyone together even closer in this new hybrid world. So lots of exciting stuff that I'll go over, and I'm going to go through a lot very, very quickly. Just showing you some of the features that you may or may not know about, and some of the back-end features as well. And then I'm going to hand it over to Michael, who will talk about managing Microsoft 365. And then, of course, at the very end, we've got some additional time built in for some Q&A. So thank you very much for joining, and let's get started. So let's talk about modern calling. Let's start with some background on Microsoft Teams. So just real quick, again, Teams is 4 years old. Teams, especially when COVID really started to come out, about 15 months or so ago. It's incredible to think that now. Things shut down overnight and people were sent home. And that left a lot of businesses from big, very enterprise size to smaller, the doctor's office right down the road with a problem. They had telephone numbers coming into their offices, into PBX systems, and phones were still ringing. Phones were ringing on desks. Well, how do you take those phone calls and swing those around and reroute those over to people that are now working from home? Well, this is part of the power of the cloud now and Microsoft Teams and the flexibility that's out there is that you can take all of those PBX, and I say all of those PBX functions, I'll get into that in a moment, that you normally have, right, from, again, the enterprise down to the small business, and you can bring those into the cloud, into your Microsoft Teams tenant. There's telephones, there's meeting room systems, there's iOS and Android apps, there's tablet apps, you name it, it's all there, and it's all designed to work in a very seamless manner. So getting into this a little bit further, let's talk about how much Teams has grown over, again, just 4 years. Recently, we just announced a couple of weeks ago that Teams had grown from 115 million users from a few months ago, our last reporting, to now over 145 million daily active users. That means there's 145 million people, unique people, logging in every day into Microsoft Teams from throughout the world. So one of the things that makes Microsoft Teams so different, what makes it different from all the other vendors that are out there? It's the Azure network is just one of the things. I'll get into a few more with a few demonstrations as we go forward too. But the Azure network is Microsoft's own network. It is one of the largest global private networks in the world. We own more fiber than anyone else out there. Microsoft does. You've got the Facebooks, the Googles, and the Amazons. We're all in a lot of partnerships as well, whereas we share a lot of the fiber lines. But as far as owning our own, that's the Microsoft network that we're talking about. There's over 100,000 miles of fiber optic network. That's actually a little bit dated information. But when we think about Teams and any voice over IP product, one of the biggest problems that everybody has out there is latency. Latency is the delays in packets. And when you're talking about streaming packets, whether it's video or voice, It's the time that it takes from, getting from me in my home office, as you can see, or and over to you. And you may be just down the road. You may be in Australia. You may be 5,000 miles away from me. But how do we have that seamless voice and very interactive phone call going on? That's the power of the Microsoft Azure network, of which Teams is built on. So what we've done is we've partnered with over 3,500 different ISPs throughout the world to bring our edge network into theirs. So whether you're an ISP in Australia or somewhere in Africa or Europe, wherever, there's a Microsoft Edge network, that once that traffic gets into our network, which you're only a hop or two away in most cases now with this peering relationship, we then own the packets. We own the quality of service. We own, so we can prioritize those packets on our network over, replication traffic from a shared Word document or something like that, right? Or same thing goes with Xbox Live. All of the services that Microsoft has run on the Microsoft Azure network. Okay, so that's one of the differences that Microsoft really has. And when I look around the competitive landscape, there's a lot of great vendors that are out there. But that's one of the differentiators I always like to bring up with Microsoft, and especially Microsoft Teams. So don't take my word for it. This is a Gartner 2020 UCAS Magic Quadrant. You can see who the leaders are in the upper right. There's Microsoft, there's RingCentral, there's Zoom and Cisco, 8x8, a lot of the names that you've heard of, but look where Microsoft really is. Right, I'm waiting for the next one to actually come out on this. So when you look at Microsoft Teams, we've released over 100 different features in the last year alone. So when you talk about, caller ID, call masking, click to call, cloud attendance, call queues, speed dials, E911, all of that is now built right into Microsoft Teams. There's a couple different ways to get your local calling numbers, right? So if you're going to take into Microsoft Teams, so if you're going to take your telephone number to your office, your general number, and you're going to port that over to Teams, that's a number port, right? You can do it one of two ways. You could take that number, maybe Verizon or AT&T or someone with a contract. That's where that number lives. You could port that into Teams, and then you can assign it to a person. Or you can take 100 numbers, 1,000 numbers, tens of thousands of numbers, and port them into Teams. So that's where we get into the calling plans that Microsoft has. You pick your calling plan, and you've got domestic calls and international calls and so on and so forth. That's where this comes in. The second way to do that is through what we call Microsoft Teams Direct Routing. And this gets into, there's a little bit more technical aspects involved with this here. I'm not going to go through all of this, but there are ways to do this so that if you're under a contract with, say, again, a Verizon or AT&T, and you want to bring those telephone numbers, make those telephone numbers ring your Microsoft Teams client, Teams Direct Route is the way to go for that. Something else with Microsoft Teams, and when we think about devices, I have people ask me all the time when I go through Microsoft Teams and calling and talk about the features and so forth. They ask, well, hey, do you guys make phones? No, we don't make phones, but we work with a number of very popular phone manufacturers who do, like the Polys, the Yealinks, the Audio Codes, the Crustrons. There's another couple that are out there now. And then when we talk about other personal devices like headsets, I've got a Sennheiser headset on right now that's 5 to 6 years old. The only thing I've ever had to do is replace the battery for about $30 just a few years ago. It lasts me all day. I love it. It's high fidelity. It's comfortable. This is just one of the many examples of the different types of headsets, personal devices that are out there that people love. I love this thing. I've tried on many other ones. This is just my personal preference. Then there's some brand new categories such as the Teams displays over on the right. There's a Lenovo ThinkSmart View. I actually just got one of those in the other day. I haven't had time to hook it up yet, but it's amazing. Amazing products, amazing technology, again, designed to make our lives just a little bit easier when we talk about working from home or soon going into a hybrid world. But then when we talk about that hybrid world, what about meetings? What about, for half the workforce that's going to be at home and the other half that will go back into the office, right? And a lot of people are getting their choice now on what they want to do. Well, there's, are you going to continue on making those meetings and conference calls with just maybe a speakerphone in a center of a table? Probably not, because that doesn't bring everyone together. That's what this type of equipment is designed to do, from the collaboration bars on the left to Teams Room devices in the middle. Teams Rooms devices are designed to take your existing equipment from televisions to video cameras to microphones to speakerphones that are already could be in your conference room, and plug them into a Teams device at a very low price point, right? And make use of that now in your new meetings. Then, of course, you've got at the higher end, you've got the Microsoft Surface Hub 2S, which is a whole different category, amazing products there. Then when we talk about, well, what if I have a call center of 100 people, or maybe 5,000 or 50,000 people, operators, agents, something like that? How does all that work? Microsoft Teams can handle that, but we do it a lot of the time with partners, such as some of the largest partners that are out there that have been in this field for decades, such as Genesis and Computer Talk and Enghouse. They've all been doing this for a long, long time. Now they're on premises as well as in the cloud. So you can actually, you can look to eliminate all of your on-premises equipment and go cloud with this. So now that we talked a little bit about the background, let's go forward with some of the key features and some of the latest features that are out there that I show people, and they're like, wow, I had no idea Microsoft Teams did that. So let's take a look at something here. We've all been on conference calls or talking with someone who's using a voice over IP product. Again, name the vendor, right? And the connectivity will go in and out, especially if you're driving up and down the road or something. And with Wi-Fi networks, you could have up to 50% packet loss. Well, that's represented in the quality of the audio that you're hearing. Well, Microsoft Teams has done something very unique. We've released our own codec that really does solve a lot of these problems. What I've got here on my screen is 2 sound files. I'm going to play the first one, and you're going to recognize this. And Ted, give me a sound check, making sure you can hear that.
Yeah, I don't hear the audio coming through.
Okay, can you reshare this video and choose include computer sound, please? Apologies, we should have checked that earlier.
Yeah,
should be in the upper right of your console there.
Let's see.
See if you can find that. Let me know. We'll continue on. But what these 2 sound clips do, the one on the left that I could hear in my headset. Apologies for that. It was a breakup. You could hear the sound quality just breaking. You could make out bits and pieces of the different words that were being said. But then the second audio clip is where the Satin codec kicks in. That only rolled out a couple of months ago for everybody worldwide. So we're all enjoying now that enhanced audio quality. So the second one is the same clip being spoken using the new codec that overcomes this up to 50% packet loss. So it's amazing the difference in what's happening now in Microsoft Teams. And again, one of the big differentiators that we have compared to some of the other competitor products out there on the market. So let me move on to the next screen here. This one here, it's another demo. This Sennheiser headset, even though it's so old, I have built-in background noise suppression. That feature is built into the microphone and the headset that's in here. It's pretty high-end, right? Think of your Bose headset or your Apple AirPods. They all have that noise canceling capability now. There's upper end ones, but if you take like maybe the earbuds, the white earbuds that come with your Apple iPhone, right? They don't have any of that, right? So when you're on a conference call or someone's on a conference call, you can hear everything going on in the background that they've got going on around them, right? And here is let's say you're in a busy coffee shop like this. This is of yesteryears, I guess, but hopefully we'll get back to this sometime soon. But here you can hear everything going on, right, in the first audio clip. But now we've introduced artificial intelligence into the sound stream that's happening from every headset that's out there, whether it's a Sennheiser one like this, whether it's your Apple AirPods Pro, or you name the headset that you're on. We've built it in now. And it sounds incredible when you turn it on. You have to enable it through the Teams client. I had a friend of mine, a colleague, who did excuse me, a YouTube. He put this up on his YouTube channel. He created a video of him vacuuming around his house, right, on a Teams video without that noise suppression on just a cheap old headset, right, and then with sound quality was amazing. You couldn't even hear the vacuum. I mean, it was just simply amazing to see that. And now, so when you think about the dogs barking or the doorbell's ringing or the kids screaming in the background, those things are really suppressed to the point at which you can't even hear it. It's simply phenomenal. So on that, let me go through one other thing. And this one, I'm gonna wait for it to play in my ear because it's like this one is like it's like fingernails on a chalkboard, just scratching them down, right? What this is say you're in a conference room with 2 or more people, and everyone jumps into the conference, but their microphones and their speakers are on. You hear all this feedback going on, and it drives everybody crazy for about 10 seconds until you can figure out, well, okay, who's got the open mic and speakers on here? Well, here, I don't know if you just saw it. I could probably replay it. You replay this as we go forward here. Go join, and in the upper right, you get a notification. Here comes the sound of my ear. And now there's a notification. Oh, there's an echo in your room. Turn off your microphone or speakers, and it gives you the option right there to turn everything off to just silence that noise. So there's no more of that, oh my gosh, who is doing that? It's right there. It's you. You just got the notice. So turn it off. So again, a lot of really neat features going on in there. Then when you look at this, there's a lot of other features in Microsoft Teams. There's call recording, right? There's call transcription. There's live captions now coming through. In fact, let me see. I don't think I can get this on here. We're in a different type of meeting right now. We're in a Teams live broadcast, but I don't think I can turn on my live captions. But you can see what this is in the lower right-hand corner here, where you say, all right, the presenter is saying, all right, sounds good. I'm going to send you a calendar invite soon. Well, here, if you notice on the left, you know exactly who's saying that because that person's name is there. It's amazing. And it's very, very current, right? But what's even more amazing is that if I go to the next slide here, you'll see something else happening, right? So here's another presenter in a company meeting, and you can see that the native language is not English. Well, if I'm listening to that or if I'm watching something like that, and I need it translated now, not just transcribed, but translated into another language, I can do that. I, as the presenter, and that only impacts my screen. I, as the attendee, am the only one that's impacting the English subtitles. Someone else can be watching that in Spanish, or German, French, whatever. They can change it to whatever they'd like. We could take about 12 input languages right now and translate those out to about 64 different output languages. And again, it's real time. I call it the Star Trek Universal Translator. It's amazing technology that's out there. Something else that's just now rolling out in the past week or so, and most people should start to see this. It's interesting when you give a presentation such as this, you're seeing my video up in a screen area, and then you're seeing this presentation in a screen share. We're all used to that. But what if you could take my silhouette here, my moving video format that's in front of my background, and you can overlay that now on a PowerPoint? Doesn't that make it a little bit more interactive? Doesn't it make it more personal? Right? Yeah, so we're coming out with things like that that are taking place, and you can see the screenshot here. Something else that's out there are transferring calls. I just did this morning. I had to go drop my kids off at the bus stop, and I was sitting here on a conference call. So on the conference call, I just simply said transfer the call. And I went right to the Teams app on my mobile phone, on my iPhone. Again, it works on Android as well. And it was seamless. And no one ever knew what I did. That's the beauty of that. That's the power of Microsoft Teams, right? And then, of course, one final thing, and we'll get into a demo here. This is a survivable branch appliance that was just released. Okay, now we always had this when you go back to like the Microsoft Link days and Microsoft Skype for Business on-premises server days, but now we've got it in the cloud. And what this is designed to do is, let's say you've got a headquarters office, right, and you might have 10 other satellite offices. Well, those smaller satellite offices, maybe it's one of your policies for your company that you have, you must always have dial tone at a desk phone. Maybe it's just a lobby phone, or maybe it's all desk phones. Well, what happens when the internet goes down? How do you get dial tone? What if 911? You have to make an emergency call, right? This enables you to do that when the internet goes down, because what this will do is swing this across a backup route through the PSTN network and be able to call 911 and get the local authorities over to your office area. Very, very innovative that's coming out. So now let's talk about Teams meetings and integration. So what I've got here, and I'm going to move this over. This is a Microsoft Azure virtual machine. So it's running in the cloud, right? This is in a demonstration environment. So what you see here is all fake. It's not real, but the functionality is there. But the emails and the IMs going back and forth are very fictitious. So here we've got the Microsoft Teams client. Okay, so what's interesting about this is, okay, well, I've got Microsoft Teams here, yes, but what about, that's the full client. Okay, what about in the web? All right, so if I look, let me blow this out here a little bit. So if I look at the web, right, I go here. If I just go to teams.microsoft.com and I log in, here is the web version of this client. So do I really need the full client to work any longer? Sure, if that's what you prefer, but you don't have to, because we can see here general, digital offsite, and if I go over here to the same channel, general, digital offsite, it's all the same. It's all updated. It's all real time. It's all live. I can make a phone call now through the web. I can join a video call through the web. I can do anything through the web that I can go and do in the Teams full client. Very similar story, not totally there. There's a few features that are still being developed on the Teams iOS app, as well as the Teams Android app that's out there. But very, very similar. So same thing with chat and calling. Here's chat and calling and instant messaging and even screen sharing. If I want to share out something on my iPhone, I share out something on my iPhone using the Teams app, and anyone here on the back end of Teams can see that. So let's talk about calendaring. Well, one of the neat things about Microsoft Teams is that it's built right into Office or Microsoft 365, right? And it's very, very tightly integrated. So if I want to pull up a Word document and edit that with someone else, I can do that through Teams. I can do it through the web, or I can do it through the full version of Microsoft Word. All of that is integrated within the cloud. Same thing with Microsoft Teams here. So when I think about calendaring, and I'm going to pull up this Outlook client here. So I'll go over to my calendar. You can see here in my calendar, over on the left-hand side within the Teams app, it matches with what's over on the right. And so if I create a new meeting here, which is something I'll do now, test meeting. And what I'll do is I'm going to turn this into a Teams meeting. Okay. The only thing I have to do for that is click on this built-in plugin. Right. This comes as part of Outlook now. If you install Teams, you've got this. So there it is. I just clicked on it, and all my dial-in information was filled in right here. Okay. So now I'm going to invite someone. And as soon as I accept this, within a few seconds, 5 or 10 seconds, you'll see, even though that I'm in a Outlook meeting, within a few seconds, you'll see it show up in Teams. That's that very, very tight integration. So now I can join the meeting actually through the Teams and Teams side, the Teams invite, or I can go over here through Outlook and join the meeting directly from there through a new join option that's there. Okay, so I'm going to invite Alex here to this one, and I'm going to send it to Alex. Okay, and now I'm just going to pull it back up. So we can see here's my test meeting. I'm going to dismiss that. Watch your screen over here. You'll see that eventually pop in. But I'm going to open this back up. I'm going to show you a few more things as we wait for this to appear here. So here we see, click here to join the meeting. All right, so if I hover over that, you can see it's a hyperlink. Right, so if you have the Teams client, you can join right in. If you don't have the Teams client, let's say you're not a Microsoft or Office 365 user, you're someone else out there from wherever, you don't have anything Microsoft, you're all Google or Amazon or whatever. How do you join that? Well, you can actually, if in the meeting options, if it's set that anyone can join, you can send this link to anybody and they can join it right from the web. The web will prompt them. If we have time, I'll show you here this in just a moment. The web will prompt them, hey, enter your name. You enter your name and you're in the meeting, right? It's just that simple. You can join by code if you like. You can, but you don't need the full client, and you do not need a subscription to Microsoft 365 to be able to join a Microsoft Teams meeting. Okay, so Microsoft Teams meeting, the license is applied to me. If I create the meeting, I can host up to 300 people in this meeting. Now, if I have the right license, license step up, I can host over 1,000 people in this meeting, right? But I'm the only one with the license. Very, very valuable. So you can see the meeting here just showed up. It took, what, 15 seconds or so, give or take. But getting back into Microsoft Teams meeting here, let's look at something else. What if I don't have access? Maybe my internet is I'm going to be driving through a spotty area, and my internet for my iPhone is not going to be the best connection. But dialing in, that's a little bit different. So here I've got some dial-in information that also automatically populated. So I've got a dial-in local number, a 1872, that's a Chicago area code, right? Then I've got comma, comma, break, break, and then a pin to the conference call, followed by a pound to submit it. So I can just click on that, and it'll dial out. Again, I'm driving down the road as this scenario here. I don't have to look and flip screens or hopefully pull over on my car to have to do this to get into the call. I just click on that and it dials, and then it joins the conference. This pin is good for that conference no matter where it is. So let's say I'm hosting a conference call, and yes, this is a Chicago dial-in number. But what if it's I work for an international company. What if there's 100 people, maybe even just 10, that want to join that call, and they're not in the US? Well, that could be a very expensive conference call all of a sudden, okay, if they're all dialing that long distance number. How can you avoid that? So there's something in here called Find a Local Number. Let me click on that. You can see where this is going. It's a hyperlink. I'll open this up. And you can see here's conference dial-in numbers. There's over 100 different countries in here and different dial-in telephone numbers. If I'm in Sydney and I want to dial into that conference number, right? Probably time zones. Yeah, take that out, push that aside. I want to dial in, and it might be 2 a.m. for me at Sydney, but I want to dial into that Chicago local number. I don't need that local number. I've got a Sydney local number. I dial that in. Again, I put that same PIN in, and I'm on that call. And I'm not making any long distance call. So you can see here, there's the list goes on and on. There's over 100 of them in here. Russia might be one that there's a number of different dial-ins, but it doesn't cover the entire country. It's very, very vast. So I do know there are some areas, and then there's of course other areas of the world that don't have dial-ins, but for the most part, we certainly do have dial-in numbers for conference calling. So when you think about the cost avoidance that can really happen here, this is key. This is something that a lot of people don't realize that's out there with Microsoft Teams. Whoops, let me go back to here, minimize this. And then, of course, there's different meeting options, like if I wanted people to bypass the lobby or wait in a lobby until I accept them in. There's a lot of different options in here for calling. But you can see the tight integration when we talk about Microsoft Teams and Outlook and Microsoft 365 and really the power of the cloud. And now we talk about, well, cost avoidance. So let's say if you have a Microsoft E3 license or an Office E3 license, right? And you want to add this on, again, for me, because I'm the only one making, setting up conference calls and so forth. How would I do that, right? Well, what's the charge for that? That's an additional $4. $4 for unlimited conference calls every month, just for me to host 300, and then a little bit more for if I want to do 1,000 people on conference calls like that. Now, 1,000 people on conference calls, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of dogs barking in the background and so forth. So we realized that. So as we raised that limit, we actually included more features and functionality into a Microsoft Teams meeting. So me as the presenter, I can mute all. Now I always had that functionality, even with 300 people, but I can say, hey, no one can unmute until I allow them to unmute. So to unmute, hey, raise your hand using the Microsoft Teams client. It's another feature that just rolled out with Microsoft Teams. And I'll go ahead and I'll unmute you so you can ask your question, and then I'll mute you back. So again, I eliminate all the chaos that can happen if you have 1,000 people on a conference call. So there's a lot more in there very similar to that. But Let me go back to my presentation here. So as I move along here, and I'm going to wrap up here in just a few minutes and hand it over to Michael, I want to leave you with this. Again, we're talking about a hybrid environment. It's a hybrid world. 80% of managers, you can see here one of our surveys we did, we expect they expect more people to have flexibility to work from home or in the office. And then when you talk about employees, hey, the world has changed, right? Employees are loving the work from home environment. They're not sitting in traffic anymore. And even if they can work from home part-time, they'll take it, right? But how can you, when we talk about Teams and calling and transferring numbers over to Microsoft Teams, but the other piece of that is meetings. And how can you make everyone feel as though they're even more connected, right, in a meeting, more collaborative, from the screen sharing to just an update from that old conference room phone that you may have in your office for a pretty minimal cost when we look at it, especially when I compare it to other solutions that have been out there for a long, long time. So when I look at this, here's where we are today. Right, we've got some together mode in the upper left. This one of these videos where it's not just a bunch of blocks. We can do up to 50 different live streams now in Microsoft Teams in a video call. But they're not just blocks anymore. You have the option to put everyone into like an auditorium, like what you're seeing here. There's also there's some whiz bang new features that are coming out that you could put everyone behind a desk. You can make it a newscast if you want. There's a lot of other custom type frames like this that are coming into Microsoft Teams. But I'd like to talk about where we're going in the future. So this is about a 2-minute video. Actually, I'm not going to show this. I will get the link for you. I'll put it in the window because this does have sound to it. And I know, unfortunately, you can't hear the sound here in this call, but I still want you to be able to see it and hear the sound. So we'll put that link in the window. But this is a video of where we're going with Microsoft Teams. So you're seeing now we're not just taking a video screen that's on a wall. We're taking a projector and blowing this up. And we're taking the outline of whoever the attendees are, and we're putting their names over top of the attendees. So if you don't know who everyone is, that's okay. Their name is right there. Even without a name tag on, you can see who that is. You can also see who is presenting. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a chat there, right? You can see who's talking, who's presenting. There's a separate chat that's going on. There's automatic note taking that's actually happening in the background there. There's also intelligent speakers. So if you have 10 people in this room, how is someone that's remote going to know who it is who's talking with just those 2 microphones on the table? Pretty soon, there's going to be artificial intelligence that'll recognize my voice as opposed to the 9 other voices that are in that room. And so that those people that are remote will know it's me talking. And when someone else is talking, they'll be able to know when that person's talking. Then, of course, there's the active speaker, right? The active speaker might be walking around the room. How do you keep track of them? You can see there's a camera that's on screen here that's actually tracking the active speaker and keeping that video going. We see that already with some of the at-home Wi-Fi webcams that are out there. But a lot of amazing technology is coming into Microsoft Teams. So when we think about Teams being 4 years old and what's out there, what's built in already, wow, there's so much more to come. So with that, Ted, I'll ask you if there's any questions, and if so, I'm happy to answer those maybe in the chat and hand it over to Michael because I think we're about at his time here. But thank you all so much. Really appreciate your time.
So. Good stuff. So Kevin, let's grab a question. I want to remind all the participants that use the Q&A feature to ask our speakers your questions. But let's grab one that's kind of timely. One of the questions that came through is, can you talk a little bit more about how the transcription features work and what are some of the use cases? I mean, how are customers utilizing the transcription and the translations capabilities in Teams?
Yep. So first of all, let's talk about the transcription and the translation features that are in Teams. It's not just Teams, but it's everywhere within the cloud, within the Microsoft Cloud. There was an article posted, gosh, it's probably 3 or 4 years ago, that talked about how good Microsoft and Google, and there's a couple other services that are out there now that do this, how good those services really are. Computer and computer services, artificial intelligence can now understand spoken words better than we can. So, for example, let's say I'm located in the Central Maryland area. If you can't tell already by my certain accent, right? We all have accents. We all have different languages, right? But sometimes it's hard to translate those in our head. Even though it's English, it might be a different dialect or different accent thrown on there. Artificial intelligence can actually pick that up better than we can now, right? So when we think about how good that is, that's how good we really are. It's better now than we actually can hear and translate in our own heads. But as far as the use cases go, there's a really neat video that was posted. It was for Skype. It's a couple years ago that talked about. It depicted two classrooms, two probably fourth or fifth grade classrooms. And on one side, you saw English-speaking fourth or fifth grade children talking into a microphone that's on a video screen with a whole classroom in the background. And then there was another side, right? And they were speaking Spanish. They were located in Mexico City. Well, then it flipped back and forth real quick, and you could hear the Cortana voice actually speaking in their native language live in real time, so that both classrooms on both ends of that call could actually hear each other. Right, so that's an example of what's out there. As far as the use case goes, I look at the manufacturing industry. Okay, the manufacturing industry, on a manufacturing floor, you generally you don't have just one in that type of industry. You don't have one native language that's being spoken. You have multiple native languages. So when you think about how are you going to communicate the latest safety protocols to everyone, and how can you ensure that they can understand it? So now if you type in whatever that protocol is in Word, Microsoft Word, you can say translate, and it'll translate into whatever language you want. So maybe you've got to post it in multiple languages. You can do that automatically, and it's darn good, right? But then what about a town hall or a meeting, right, where everyone wants to hear from the leadership once a quarter? Doesn't matter who you are, what your language is. You need to be able to understand what's being said. Well, like I showed in the, I had a slide up there that was demonstrating that if English is not my primary language, I can switch it into one of many other languages that are out there, so that I can see the subtitles, the transcription in my own language in real time. So I can see that. That's a great question, and it's a great use case for that.
Yeah, and I guess I would just add that people shouldn't overthink. I mean, the translation stuff is kind of amazing stuff, like you've just shared, Kevin. But just don't underestimate a lot of the basic stuff about having a transcription from a meeting. I mean, if you're doing a webinar, you've got a transcription of the entire content, which you can use for SEO, and you can kind of nest that alongside your marketing content. Just having a transcription from important meetings where you can go back if you're having to kind of consolidate notes or type up meeting minutes, or just having that transcription to be able to go back and do practical business things all the time with that transcription is something we just haven't had to date in most of these platforms. And so there's tremendous value there on just a very basic level.
Yeah, and that's a great one, and that brings another use case to mind. What if you're on vacation for a week, maybe 2 weeks? Yeah, if you're really lucky. And there was a couple of project update meetings that were going on, and your portion of the project was being presented by someone else. They were covering for you, and you wanted to hear what that presentation was like, and maybe what some of the feedback was. You don't have to listen. You no longer have to listen through that 2-hour meeting to figure out where your name was mentioned, where your project was mentioned. You can actually search, type in a search field. Hey, where was this name or this query? Where did this word first pop? And then you could go right to that moment, an hour and 45 minutes in, and you can start to play, and you can listen to that area where your portion of that project was discussed. So yeah, the power of that is amazing. Talk about a time saver. Yeah, that's a good one. Yep.
Okay, well, so I just want to remind everybody, we've got these experts on the line here, so please queue up your questions in the Q&A capability. And I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Let's see here. I'm going to put you live here, Michael.
Thank you. So I really want to thank Kevin for kicking off this presentation. Really great job. What I thought would be good to start off with on my end is just giving you a little bit of perspective from NENS. I'd say probably about 3 years ago, we wholesale adopted everything in the Teams platform. And as Kevin had showed, having everything integrated from, Word, Excel into Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, the calendar, everything integrated has been a real game changer. Trying to maneuver between different applications that don't integrate, and you're copying one thing from here to the other place and having to save it to your desktop and then uploading it somewhere else, it was always first of all, it was super inefficient, but really for me it was just frustrating, right? And I lost it, and like I said, inefficient, lost a ton of time. During that time when we made the transition to adopt Teams wholesale, we had a competing chat product that people were using in the organization, and because they were familiar with it and had used it for a little while, at first they were a little bit reluctant to really want to give Teams a shot and utilize the channel features within Teams. But they were quick to comply, because I did what every good manager does. I shut down access to the competing product and kind of forced them into having to use it. But all joking aside, we got into it, we were using it, and they really noticed the benefit of having that true integrated experience. Also from a Teams calling, so we also adopted that this past year, and similar to what Kevin had mentioned, it's pretty amazing, right? You're not tied to a physical phone anymore, right? I would, even during the pandemic, I would go into the office. I'd be at my home office. I'd have to go visit my mom and work from there, during the pandemic, and my phone just went with me everywhere I went, right? I just had my computer, or I had the app on my cell phone, and it was just super seamless and super easy to use. We've done a ton of due diligence around this. For our clients that have been asking us, about rolling out offerings, around this, at the end of this, you'll see a place to, ask questions and inquire. We've done a bunch of due diligence, and we can educate you on, the different things we looked at between direct Teams calling and doing direct routing and some of these other third-party integrations that are out there. But I can tell you from our perspective that it's been, really easy to make the transition from, on-site PBX to maneuvering over, and the experience has been pretty awesome. So with all that being said, there are a couple things that are also pretty critical in Teams, and that of course is, I'm just going to go ahead and push the slide over, is securing the whole Microsoft Office 365 environment. It's what's been awesome that Microsoft has done over the last year is they've made it way more accessible and way easier to use. As Kevin mentioned, even if you don't have a Teams client or don't have a Microsoft account, you can just click on the link, put in your name, and you're entering it into that meeting. But with anything that allows that level of flexibility, you want to make sure that you're securing the environment. So, if you're looking to adopt this or really any other SaaS-based application, we really want to look at doing something called multi-factor authentication. There are multiple ways of doing it. We happen to have a couple of standards. This one is the most utilized today. It's a product called Duo that Cisco acquired a number of years ago, and it's really simple and easy to use. It's, as you can see here, integrates with a bunch of different applications. As far as us rolling it out to the user, it takes minutes, and user authentication is within seconds. As you can see in that picture there, as soon as you type in username and password, that little pop-up is going to happen on your phone, and you can hit approve or deny and get access to your application securely. And of course, if that pops up on your phone and you didn't enter in to get access to Office 365, you need to hit deny. You need to contact your administrator, let them know somebody has access to your password, and we need to work together and make sure that we change some of those passwords and get you secure. The other part is well, we put all this really amazing and important information into Microsoft Office 365 and in Teams. So how do we make sure to back it up? Well, another great partner that we worked with is Datto, and they have their Datto SaaS protection. This is critical. It's probably one of the best values out there, and you should do it even if it's with this product or another one, of ensuring that you're backing up all of that important information that you have in Microsoft Teams and in general in Office 365. When I sit down with people and try to talk to them about this, they say, well, doesn't Microsoft just take care of this? Don't they just back this up for me? And the answer is no. Microsoft will, retain all of your data, but as soon as you delete it, Microsoft thinks you deleted it for a reason. There's no need to keep it there anymore. So as you can see right here, there's a 30-day retention period. So after 30 days of deleting something, it is lost, gone forever. So I think it's really, really critical that you understand this one piece and know that there are solutions out there that will help back it up. So again, everything that lives in Microsoft Teams, everything that lives in Microsoft SharePoint, of course, email, calendar, contacts, all of that stuff will be backed up, through this through a product like this. And again, there are others that are out there, but it's really critical that you protect your data. So those are really just two just kind of highlight key points, with rolling out Office 365 and really taking advantage of Teams of wanting to secure that as well, as well as be able to back that stuff up. So with that, I did want to leave some time for Q&A, maybe to talk about our specific experience around rolling this out, people that have migrated from one platform to another, why that might have happened. So I'll transition it now over to Q&A.
Okay, great. So we got Kevin and we've got Michael both live here. So let's throw out a question around Teams calling, and I just want to make sure that we kind of explain a really important concept. In Teams, you can, inside an organization, you can simply call a colleague very simply with a headset and your computer or your mobile device. And then when we talk about Teams calling, you can also connect Teams to the PSTN or to the phone network in general. So Kevin, could you maybe tackle that topic and just elaborate on that a little bit so that people are clear that, Teams has voice capability built in as a basic functionality, but really when we're talking about Teams calling, quote unquote, it's really about connecting Teams to the actual phone system, which can allow you to call any phone in the world, basically.
Yep, you're correct. So you can actually take your telephone number, maybe it's the telephone number that's assigned to your desk at work, or maybe it's the general number that people call for your business, right? They call that business number and they hear a welcome message. Hey, thank you for calling Dr. So-and-so's office or something like that. Just a very small example. Press 1 for to schedule an appointment, press 2 for billing, press 3 for whatever, lab results. Excuse me. What happens when, how does that call then route? Well, that's the local PBX system that's probably hanging in that doctor's office, their closet somewhere, right? Well, that functionality, you can port that all into Microsoft Teams. So you start by setting up the functionality, right? As an example of, hey, press 1, welcome to this office, and you can place it, you can record that, and you can upload it to Microsoft Teams, and that's what people hear when they first call in. And then when they press 1, hey, thank you for contacting the billing departments. Please stand by as I try to reach someone. And then it starts to ring whoever's in that calling group. Maybe it's one person, maybe it's 10 people or 1,000 people, whatever it could be, right? But that's how you set up that functionality. But number one, number two is, how do you get your general telephone number or your desk phone over to Microsoft Teams? That's where the Microsoft Teams calling plans come in. So there's an area in Microsoft Teams that it can get kind of complicated, which is why you need someone with some good experience to do it, because this is your telephone number that you're talking about that your business depends on. You do not want or cannot tolerate any downtime. So again, that's the power of the cloud, right? But you would actually go through a porting process, very similar to if you've switched from, I don't know, T-Mobile to Verizon or AT&T. Your cell phone number is actually ported from one carrier to another. It's very similar to Microsoft with Microsoft Teams, right? You get a date and a time range set on when that number is going to transfer. Then when it transfers over, we then find that in a list of available numbers in your Microsoft Teams tenant, and we assign that to you if it's your desk number, for example, or we assign it as the general number. It really is. I've oversimplified the process, but that's really how it works, and it's something you can get set up in a matter of days now.
Right, and to maybe simplify it even further, I mean, really what we're talking about with this latter example is really replacing your traditional phone system or voice over IP phone system with Microsoft Teams. So presumably there's a licensing dimension. Can you talk about what's required if you wanted that more advanced Teams calling capability? What Microsoft license do you need to have with Microsoft 365?
Sure. So there's there's a phone, what we call a phone license, as well as a calling plan license, right? And that calling plan, very similar. Again, I'll equate this back to cell phones, right? So like there's a domestic plan where we'll talk about U.S. only at this point, where you get unlimited incoming minutes, but 3,000 outgoing minutes. Okay, so there's 3,000 outgoing minutes. Let's say, Ted, you and I are on the same calling plan. For those 3,000 outgoing minutes, I use 1,000, and you need to use more. Well, it's actually pooled, so there's no overage in that scenario. You'll dip into mine if you run over yours within that same month of minutes that you have there. And one of the other things that's really important to highlight too is that the difference of having that PBX system in your office as opposed to Microsoft Teams. Again, in the office, it only rings that desk. That number is there in the office only. But let's say you're sick or you're working hybrid or you haven't opened up your office yet, depending on where you are. That number will follow you anywhere you go. And so if you have the Microsoft Teams, like I explained, the web client open and logged in, if you have the app opened and logged in on your desktop, on a Mac, on a iPhone, on an Android tablet, it'll ring everywhere. It'll ring those 5 places all at one time.
Right.
And depending on where you pick up, that's where the call's transferred to, and you're on the call. The number follows you where you're going, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and living in teams. I mean, I think that's something we're hearing more and more from customers and clients is just how organizations and teams they find themselves living within teams throughout the day. So let's bounce a question to Michael. Can you talk about, we just lived through this pandemic, months and months of having everyone working remotely. What has been the experience and adoption amongst NENS clients with adopting Teams?
Sure. It was rapid. It was very, very rapid. What was really great about the majority of our clients is that we had already configured them to work remotely, right? So making that transition from early on in the pandemic wasn't that difficult. But the challenge that we did face was that they did want to now start adopting some additional tools. It's like, okay, so I want to be able to meet face to face with people and meet with my clients and so forth. So what can I do now? And the answer was pretty simple in most cases, because it's like most of our clients had already moved to Office 365. They just hadn't utilized Teams. So we went from being a traditional help desk to an implementation from remote to training on how to best utilize Teams. So it was, from, I would say, March and April, we were extremely busy. But by the end of April, all of our clients, even the ones that weren't really set to work remotely, we'd help them figure it out. And it worked out really, really well. One of the things from our experience and things that we got questions about was if we had people in the office versus people remotely, and how you kind of mesh those things together. And what we found is that it was really better when everybody was just pure remote, unless you had a really great Teams room set up. I think Kevin had mentioned this earlier in his presentation, where having a bunch of people in the conference room sitting around a speakerphone, and then having 4 or 5 people remotely, and on screen. Those people that were remote did not have a good experience. So what we decided to do was, one, make sure that we had those types of meetings in the appropriate room that had the technology, or we had everybody just go back to their office and actually do it just via Teams for the people that were actually in the office, just sitting at your laptop, sitting in front. And the experience for the people that were remote was the exact same for everybody. So the messaging got across. It was easier to communicate. It was just an overall better experience. So I think when other people start to have the hybrid experience, if most people have been remote, they should experiment with a couple of things. But from our experience and what we've seen with our clients, if you don't have a really kick-ass Teams room set up with the appropriate gear, it's really better off to have that one-to-one relationship where you're just sitting behind your laptop.
But I think with people surging back into the office, so to speak, over the next coming months, I think every organization should be looking at, do our conference rooms and huddle spaces and whatnot need a reboot? so that we incorporate all these cool peripherals that Kevin showcased earlier, and then properly get them connected to Teams so you have a real Teams room experience. So you're not having any of those trade-offs, I think. So.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's some people a little bit more proactive about it, right? They're getting ready, they're ordering the equipment. And I think everybody remembers anybody that was looking for a webcam in like March of last year wasn't finding one for a long time. So the lesson learned here is, one, try to be as proactive as possible. Especially in Massachusetts, where they've just changed the game a bit with the May 29th opening, and I know there's a lot of businesses now talking about coming back to the office a little bit earlier. And if that's the case, Ted, you're right. Start inquiring now. We're happy to help, of course, right? If you want to try to put together a great Teams room, we're happy to help. But I use the other one as just as a quick alternative, right? If you still have people remotely, and until you can build out that room exactly the way that you want it, you're still acting as if you're remote, but it works.
Okay, I think we probably have time for maybe one or two more questions, but Andrew wants to know what are the advantages of using Cisco Duo over other authenticator apps?
So hopefully I answer this question appropriately. Let's say I have application A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, all of these applications have some authenticator app, right? Use this app here, or directly with that particular provider. Now the challenge is you have 5 applications, and now you're having to manage 5 different multi-factor authentication modes, right? Is it sending a code via text message, right? Is it calling you with the code? Is there a different app on your phone? It's like managing multiple passwords across many different applications. It becomes unruly. So the really great part of having a product like a Duo or something similar to it is there's a level of governance and control, right? So you have all these applications, you configure them to utilize Duo. Everybody in your organization that's utilizing those applications is forced to use multi-factor authentication. It's with one provider. It's way easier to manage. And if anybody comes to you and says, hey, is everybody in your organization using two-factor, multi-factor authentication across business critical applications? Well, in the first method, it was, I don't know. We give them an option. There's 5 different applications. There's 5 different ways of doing it. By utilizing a Duo, it's, yes, I can guarantee you that anybody in our organization that gains access to this information must go through this. And so we're forcing two-factor, and I can show you right here that it's being done. So it's a lower cost of ownership, absolutely much better security, and just a couple other things that I mentioned.
Okay, well, I think so. Cisco Duo, it brings it all together and really makes the multi-factor authentication experience really easy for your employees, and you add that essential layer of additional security. So with that, I think that's probably the last question we can entertain before wrapping up today. But what I want to do is, if you're a NENS client and you're curious about how to take your Teams implementation to another level, if you're interested in Teams calling, or you're interested in figuring out if your conference rooms need a reboot to get them Teams room ready, please reach out to the NENS team. If you are a prospective client, if you're considering the needs of an IT service provider to help take your technology and your organization to another level, please reach out to the NENS team. They're experts in implementing Microsoft Teams and Microsoft 365 and doing it securely and adding backup and rolling it out and doing deployments and supporting that sort of technology. So with that, I want to thank all of our participants for joining us today on the live session. And I want to thank our presenters and speakers, Kevin Martins from Microsoft, who gave us a great demo of all the new cool features that are coming out with Microsoft Teams. And Michael Kourkoulakos talked about how the NENS Teams takes Microsoft 365 and Teams to another level by being your consultant and service provider in implementing this outstanding technology. With that, I think we're out of time. Thanks everybody for joining another NENS webinar, and thank you to our speakers. Everybody have a great day and take care.